Ladies and gentlemen, I am pissed off. I'm pissed off. I'm not going to take it anymore. What am I pissed off about, you ask? Well, before we get to that, I'm going to do my weekly update on the podcast. Now, there isn't too much to update on, but in case you haven't heard yet, our 2-part series about Vladimir Lenin and the Bolshevik Revolution has dropped. If you haven't listened to it yet, then what are you doing? Huh? We put out quality content, and so we would appreciate it if you listened. Now, that's about it, really. We're going to be dropping a couple episodes about boxing heavyweight champions, and it's going to be genius, like all of our shit is, but expect those to drop sometime in the next few weeks. Anyway, getting back to this week's video topic, I'm pissed off about standardized testing. I think about it and I get so angry, and so I had to vent in this video, right? Ugh. One of the reasons that standardized testing pisses me off is that it discourages critical thinking. Don't we want our kids to be thinking critically, folks? Isn't that, I don't know, the whole point of education? To get people to look around the world and ask questions, and try to derive answers based from critical thinking and good use of evidence? Well, when you have standardized testing, when you have just a bunch of multiple choice questions, you can't encourage critical thinking. Think about it. Which, if you were doing a standardized test, you couldn't. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, let's say we're talking about, the Vietnam War. And we're looking at all the different ways that it was justified and all the realities of what happened. And you try to ask your students, was the Vietnam War justified and why? That would require them to use the brains when they're thinking about everything that they've learned, to process things. But if you're doing a standardized test, you can't fit that into a multiple choice question. You can't limit it to only 4, maybe sometimes 5 responses. What are you doing, right? And so when you have standardized tests where there's only a few different options and the students can't put their own voice and reflect their own thinking process into the answers, they're not taught to critically think. They're taught to regurgitate a bunch of facts, a bunch of little trivia pieces. And that leads me to my second problem with standardized testing, and this one might piss me off just as much as the critical thinking one, and that's the fact that it makes history boring for students to learn. I know for me, back when I was in K through 12, I didn't like history. I know what you're thinking. Dave, what are you talking about? You're a historian. Stop bullshitting us. Friend, I am not bullshitting you. I'm not bullshitting you at all. Rather, I learned to think more critically about history when I was in community college and then later on at other universities. But I didn't learn to love history when I was in K through 12 because I was taught a series of factoids and wasn't asked interesting questions. Other than one history teacher who I had who was really good, actually, and shout out to him. But anyway, when you have students listening and regurgitating trivia factoids, they're not being engaged. So not only are you not teaching critical thinking, you're boring the snot out of your students. Is that what we want for our kids? That's not what I want, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans. That's not what I want at all. And that's why I'm pissed off. One more thing that pisses me off about standardized testing is it leaves some students behind, sometimes in counterintuitive ways. I know what you're thinking, David. What do you mean by counterintuitive? It seems pretty damn intuitive to me. Well, here's an example. Working the last couple years for a writing program at UC San Diego, you know, I've TA'd for different professors, and they have different approaches. I had one professor who did multiple choice on his exams for very nice reasons. He was actually trying to give us, a lower amount of things to grade, because as TAs we have a lot on our plates. But in doing so, a lot of students actually did worse on the multiple choice than they did on the essay portions. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, how does that make sense? It maybe it's just the smart kids who did better on the essays than the multiple choice. But that wasn't the case at all. For example, a lot of my students who I knew a little bit more personally, they come to office hours, I get to know about their life stories. The students who had rougher backgrounds, they actually tended to do worse on the multiple choice and better on the essays. Why is that? Because if you're just memorizing factoids, then you're going to become really good at regurgitating those. But if you're from, I don't know, an underserved community or an underfunded high school, then you're not going to learn that skill as much. And so I had a lot of students from these underserved communities and underfunded schools that were showing that they were thinking about the material in the essays, but then they would bomb the multiple choice. Some of my students had B quality work in the essays and D's on their multiple choice, folks. It doesn't make any sense. Huh? And I think I speak for all of us, we want our education system to have some goddamn common sense. So, for these and the following reasons, I think standardized testing is bullshit. It also promotes inequality, but that's another day or another video for another day. Sorry, folks, I'm just so angry I can't even speak straight no more. So I'm going to log off. Y'all have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. The only way we have a decent life on this earth is by giving a shit about others. So have a beautiful week, ladies and gentlemen. Love you. Goodbye.